Video game remakes have become increasingly popular over the last few years. Ratchet & Clank in 2016, Crash Bandicoot in 2017, Spyro in 2018, Resident Evil, and lots of Pokemon games have shown the potential of reimagining a franchise. Rather than simply remastering the originals, remakes take on the daunting task of taking a game to a new level and improving it, all the while trying to stay true to the game's core gameplay and story elements. Reviews of remakes typically address what stays the same in the game and what's new and improved. Reviewers typically brag about graphical improvements and then decide whether the game does a good job of staying true to the original or bringing in fresh new changes. A lot of the reception that remakes get comes from the player's expectations for the game before they even begin playing it. People don't always like change, especially when it involves changing something they've loved for years. The question that's difficult to answer is, what is a remake supposed to do? Is it supposed to provide more story? Should it change the characters? Are graphical improvements the only thing a good remake needs? I doubt it. Otherwise, we just ask for a remaster. A remake is supposed to add something to our beloved titles of old, but gamers are divided on what exactly that is. That's why today I want to use the recently released Final Fantasy VII Remake as a case study of the possibilities that remakes offer. I've chosen to use this game because I think it does more to remake the original game than any other remake we've ever seen. Before we begin, I'd like to take a couple of minutes to explain my expectations and thoughts before I started playing. That way we can get my preconceived desires out in the open, because they undoubtedly influenced my playthrough and the way my thoughts changed throughout my experience. Talk of a Final Fantasy VII Remake has been around since the days of the PS2. Square even announced a remake for the game during the early 2000s, but then decided not to do it because of the work it was already doing on other new Final Fantasies, as well as the extra time they would have needed to dedicate to putting the game on new hardware. Fans stayed hopeful that a remake could happen on the next console generation, but by then they were all hard at work on Final Fantasy XIII and the entire Fabula Nova Crystallis universe. Teasers like the tech demo they released in 2005 increased speculation, but Square was insistent that no remake was currently being developed. While the continuous delay felt disappointing and fans began to wonder if the remake would ever happen, we can look back now and see that the devs were telling the truth when they said they didn't want to rush it because they wanted to make sure they did it right. They were very clear that a Final Fantasy VII Remake would be just as big of a project as developing an entirely new Final Fantasy game. Thankfully, after Final Fantasy XIII and all of its spin-offs and sequels were finally done, there was time available to spend on creating what people had wanted for over a decade. A lot of the team felt that they were getting older, and the window to work on the remake was closing too. So in 2015, the remake finally entered development. Because the remake had been put off for so long by that point, the guys who worked on the original had to re-envision what they wanted out of it. They decided that the game had to do much more than just remaster the original. They didn't want the game to simply appeal to nostalgia, and they didn't want to release a prettier version of the 97 version without actually adding depth to the world. The decision they made was to truly recreate Midgar and to bring the world to life, expanding the universe and adding a deeper understanding of characters without changing what people loved at the core of the original. I was excited about the approach that they were taking, but part of me was skeptical because I feared that things would be taken too far, that the remake wouldn't be like the original at all. My concerns grew even more when I saw a gameplay trailer showing the new battle system. It looked too much like Final Fantasy XIII, and I began to feel like the remake was losing its identity with every new look that we were given in trailers and demos. By the time the game was released a few days ago, I wasn't expecting to like it, to be honest. I was prepared for a disappointment because I thought the game would be too different. While I was right about the game being very different from the original, I'm happy to say that I was completely wrong about that being a bad thing. Square Enix has completely rewritten the book on what a video game remake can be, and they've done an excellent job of staying true to the original while expanding the personalities, environments, and gameplay in a way that makes your love for the original grow even deeper. So let's take a step-by-step look at how they've done that, as well as some areas that could still be improved. The easiest place to start when discussing a remake is typically the graphics. It's pretty obvious that using new technology on an old game will make it prettier. That's been the case for the most popular remakes of the last few years, and it's the same with Final Fantasy VII. This game is incredibly beautiful, and the richness of every detail is a sight to behold. One place this shines is in the characters themselves. The outfits of the main cast are spot on. Bracelets, bows, sunglasses, boots, hair, and every part of what you could make out of the pixels on PS1 are brought to life in the finest detail. Even the way the characters walk and run has been recreated in a way that's easily noticeable, yet also subtle. I was pleasantly surprised to see that your weapons and materia change in the cutscenes depending on what you have equipped in the menu. So if Cloud is carrying the Buster Sword with 2 pieces of green magic materia and a yellow piece of materia, that's exactly what you're going to see in the cutscene. If you change that to the Hard Edge with blue support materia and yellow command materia, you'll see that in the next cutscene. Same thing with Tifa, Barret, and Aerith. It's a perfect example of how every small change in detail is included, so it feels like the world is alive and constantly changing around you. This is also true in the areas around Midgar. While many of the places are new, and they weren't even in the original, the team has also done an excellent job of including the iconic and memorable parts of the original. One example is the huge word avalanche written on the wall that you climb to exit the slums. It always stuck out in the original, and it still does in the remake. The mask and weapons of the Shinra enemies, the layouts of the houses, it's all the same, but it's also deeper and more interesting, with more things to look at. Wall Market is an absolutely stunning recreation, with every area of the original being revamped and finely tuned to show you what this would have actually looked like back in 1997. In the original, it would take you somewhere between maybe 5 to 10 hours to experience the slums of Midgar. In the remake, it takes you over 20 just for that part alone, perhaps even more if you stop to do all of those side quests. Part of that is because there's so much more to look at and take in. There's a lot to enjoy about the graphical upgrades, and it's a good example of how a remake can take something that players are already familiar with and upgrade it, without interfering with how players remember it. There are some examples of when this is taken a little too far, though, to be clear. Don Corneo looks vastly different from his original character, but the changes they've made really do fit his personality and character, so it's okay. There's also some serious texture issues in some of the characters and areas. Some of the things on the sides of the roads and the NPCs like shopkeepers frequently look out of place, almost like they belong in a game from 10 years ago. But those small distractions don't detract from the world of Midgar enough to kill your immersion. As with almost all Final Fantasy games, the cutscenes are immaculate, and overall, it's safe to say that the graphical upgrades are a perfect example of how remakes can take something we already know and love and enrich it while still maintaining the core identity of what we all love. Most remakes get this part right, so it's not surprising that the game is a visual upgrade over its predecessor. The part of the game that concerned me the most before playing it was the gameplay itself, in particular, the battle system. In the days of old, players relied on the active time-based system that made you wait for a character's bar to fill up before selecting an action from a menu. That certainly didn't look like the case in the trailers leading up to release. Every time a new look was unveiled, it appeared that the remake was going to be more like Final Fantasy XIII. That didn't sit well with me because of my preference for the original. It's another example of that attachment I felt to the way things were. I didn't want too much to change, and it looked like a lot was changing. I was correct. The remake is more like 13 than the original in its battle system. It's faster, more action-based, and it's chock full of animations that are much more detailed and complicated. However, the game offers the ability to play on classic mode, so they've covered their bases really well here. I decided to give the new style a try though, and after a while, I discovered that I actually enjoyed it more than the classic mode. I'd say the game is tailored more to the updated battle system if you want to get the most out of your battles, and that's disappointing news for people who prefer the classic mode. But the option is there, and it's good enough that the game can satisfy both audiences. Sure, it's very much like 13 in its staggering system, and it's a huge step away from the original, but I would be lying if I told you that it doesn't make Cloud seem like way more of a badass than he was back in 1997. He's flying around like Yoda at the end of Star Wars Episode 2, a vortex of slashing and bashing, and it all just feels really satisfying. The same thing goes for Tifa. She feels more like a martial artist than she ever has before, and and it's really satisfying. What they've done is taken the original roles that each character had and added more layers to make it feel like they're a part of a team. Tifa is fast and she can stagger enemies really well. Cloud switches between quick hack and slash to this powerful Punisher mode, and Barret still feels kind of big and tanky, but also a good ranged option if he has his gun equipped. The way they've done abilities is fresh too, and it adds another dimension to how you handle the enemies you're fighting. The battle system is different in terms of what you are using your controller to do, but the weapons and equipment that are unique to each character are brought to life more than ever before. There's no doubt that Cloud's swordplay is an extension of who he is, just like Tifa's punching and kicking are a part of her character and her stunning physique. Overall, the battle system is different, and if you're not looking for a lot of change, then you'll likely walk away feeling disappointed. Luckily, Classic Mode is there for those folks who wanted a replica of 1997. I'm happy to say that I found the new system more fun though. The tactical mode that you can easily switch to slows the battles down enough that it still feels like you're strategically making decisions in the menu to defeat enemies who require specific choices to bring them down. The battles are different, but the things the characters do are the same. This remake shows that that's a really good mix to have. The other parts of gameplay that have been upgraded but consistent are mostly from particular parts of a chapter and certain side quests. The motorcycle chase still feels mostly the same. You press square or circle to swing the sword left or right as you drive the bike. The bike still feels dated in the way that it responds and handles with your controller. It's really simple, just like the original, but with a little something new thrown in, like the ability to press L1 to attack the other enemies from afar. The motorcycle chase is another example of how this game is the same, but with just enough added depth to be an enjoyable experience that offers something we haven't seen before. The gem and wall market is another example. A lot of these side quests require you to do things you've done in the original, like the squatting competition, but now the interface is more fleshed out. It's simple, you press buttons at the right time to do the squats faster than your opponent. However, now you have to worry about stamina and timing a little more than you did back in 97. Again, it's the same, but it's just a bit more complicated. One place where the game diverges quite a bit is the frequent use of triangle to interact with things. It slows the game down, and it's one of the main reasons that a 10-hour experience is now a 40-hour experience. It also changes some of my favorite parts of the original, which is somewhat disappointing. A good example is the use of the grappling gun. When you traverse your way upwards towards Shinra HQ, you have to stop every couple of minutes, hold triangle, and grapple hook your way to the next area. It's a new change, but it's also very simple and really doesn't feel fun. You also have to hold triangle at various junctions to solve puzzles, like pulling levers or pushing your way through rubble. These are the parts of the game that truly feel like they were included as filler. The puzzles are often very simple to solve, but overly time-consuming and repetitive. Just like Final Fantasy XIII was full of hallways, so is Final Fantasy VII. It's impossible to get lost with a straightforward minimap, and if you didn't have to do the same task over and over, the game would be half as long as it is. The sewers are a good example because you spend a lot of time draining and refilling the tunnels with water, even though you can clearly see the other side and you know exactly where you're going to go next. There's also a segment that requires you to grab a keycard, make a decision about how to weaken the upcoming boss, and you do that 3 times in a row, all the while just making your way through hallways. Literally, the same exact process done over and over. The platforming in the roof of the church and Tifa's platforming in Shinra HQ present the same problem. It's unnecessarily slow, and it feels like it's only there to make sure players got more than 30 hours out of their experience. The point I'm making here is that a lot of the puzzle platforming in certain chapters could easily be taken out of the game without sacrificing anything meaningful. Lots of these repetitive areas also include a cutscene that has the characters doing and saying the same thing, but just worded a little bit differently. How many times do we need to see Barret get angry about nothing and talk about how bad he hates Shinra before we get the point? There are plenty of superfluous additions that are here for the sake of making the game longer without adding any depth to the characters. It's likely a part of Square Enix's desire to deliver the game episodically, while also making sure that people are paying $60 for a full game. What we see here is an example of how a remake can get really bogged down in making sure that the game is longer so players feel like they got their money's worth. Does a remake of a 40-hour game have to be spread out over what will undoubtedly be over 100 hours through episodic releases? I don't think so, and I think that by the time this full remake has been released in a couple of years, fans are going to look back and realize that one part of the gameplay that this remake falls short on is the addition of these monotonous puzzles and platforming that are included for the sake of extending playtime. Gamers these days expect long games, and the devs attempting to deliver that just for the sake of it is an example of where remakes can go wrong when trying to balance the desires of the modern-day gamer. Another place where this extension of playtime is obviously present is in the story itself. The remake team has decided to break this game up into chapters, so the easiest way to explain what they've done is to think of it as a book. Imagine your favorite book is 10 chapters long. Now imagine that it's been republished, but each chapter is longer because there's more dialogue and monologue, both internally and externally. The book also includes 8 more chapters that diverge from the traditional story, mostly to provide more explanation of the characters who played smaller roles in the original. The other members of Avalanche are a perfect example of this approach. Jesse, Biggs, and Wedge were certainly an important part of the Avalanche team back in 1997, but we didn't really know much about them other than they hated Shinra and they wanted to save the planet. Basically, it was easy to say that they had the same worldview as Barrett, who is one of the main characters. Now, however, there's an entire chapter devoted to Jessie alone. She comes to Cloud with a secret mission. You get to go to her house, meet her parents, spend quality time with her, Biggs, and Wedge. You learn about her life story, her life goals, and the real reason that she hates Shinra. There's even a relationship element added that makes Cloud seem like he can't even be around a woman without them throwing themselves at him. The 26 side quests that are available are also branching storylines, but they do something different. Many of them don't add to our understanding of old characters, they introduce new ones that weren't even included in the original. What they've done is pick parts of the game where we could assume things happened, and they've added in what actually did happen. Depending on what you're looking for from a remake, this is perhaps where the game can shine the most, or completely get lost in the weeds. Certainly the story does an excellent job of expanding what happened in the original, but it's also added hours of other stuff that we never even thought to care about 2 decades ago. While this isn't a revelatory conclusion, the simplest way to explain what they've done is to say that some of it works, and some of it just doesn't. Do you really care that the Sector 5 slums had an orphanage this whole time? And if you do care, do you really want to walk around town finding kids and telling them to go to school? Do you think that finding cats and pressing triangle on them is a good addition to what was already an incredible story? I mean, a lot of it's really up to you, but I'm confident in saying that quite a few of these chapters and side quests are nothing but filler, just like the puzzles and platforming. It's totally understandable that the team wanted to add more, because diehard fans definitely will care about every bit of lore in the world that this planet offers. It's the reason that Disney has added layer after layer to Star Wars. It's a decent comparison to make because some people hate what's happened to that franchise, because for them, it's not as good as the original. Well, the same thing applies with Final Fantasy VII. This remake has added so many things that bring Midgar to life in a new and exciting way, but at certain points along the way, you might find yourself detached. In my experience, I went out of my way to do every side quest and every optional piece of the game that I could, mostly because I wanted to upgrade my weapons and unlock all of the materia. At certain points, those side activities and added chapters drew me in, and at other times I completely didn't care. Those cats are the main example. Totally did not care about the cats. I also didn't care about some of the new characters they added in, like the teacher or the doctor in the Sector 5 slums. The good news is, there's a lot in this game to enjoy. The bad news is, some of it feels like it's been added in just for the sake of giving this remake something new and extra stuff to do. And again, it's likely that quite a few of those 26 side quests are there to make sure that people didn't pay $60 for a 20-hour game. This part of the case study shows that remakes have the potential to bring an old world to life like never before, but they also have the potential to be flat out boring because there needs to be something or anything to do in order to make people happy. Adding new characters isn't a good idea unless those characters offer something valuable to the story. In this remake, they often do add something important, but there's plenty of times when they don't. If we look at Final Fantasy VII as an example to learn from, a takeaway is that adding more to the story surrounding the characters we already know works better than adding completely completely new characters. So next up, let's talk about the music. We have to, it's Final Fantasy. So the music is sort of the same, but most of it's been rearranged a lot. Personally, I don't think the music stays true to the original as much as it should. Some of the pieces being rearranged works and it feels really epic, but at other times it just makes me want to hear the original. Music also feels a lot more subtle in this remake, and it's there in the background rather than in the forefront at certain parts. You also collect music now, which feels more like what they did with Final Fantasy XV. I'm not going to go into the music too much, but it's definitely another example of how some changes in remakes are good, but it's really easy to stray away from what people already enjoy. I like the music, and I like some of the changes that they made to it, but it's certainly not the same. But the menu will still give you that same feeling as the original. Whether it's the music, the gameplay, the graphics, or the story, what this remake does is show that uncovering parts of a game that were originally left to our imagination works. Midgar is much more detailed than ever before. Every part of the game, from the train graveyard to the honeybee inn, has been transformed and expanded. Each character feels more human than they ever have, and everything feels real. From my observations, and from taking popular opinion and critical review into account, one takeaway from this game is that remakes are at their best when they provide more depth and detail to what we already know, but they sometimes fall short when they start adding too many things that are new or unnecessary. In the case of Final Fantasy VII, the desires to stretch a 10-hour piece of the game into a 40-hour, fully fleshed out experience has resulted in a lot of filler. It's worth it though, because there's an equal amount of improvements and additions that are very meaningful and valuable, and that provide a more personal connection to the characters and story that we thought we already knew. It seems that remakes are at their best when they expand and provide more detail to what's already there, and they're more prone to fall short when they start adding these things to make the game bigger and longer just to satisfy gamers. This is all drawn from my personal expectations, attachments, and experiences, of course, so I'd love to hear your thoughts as well. What do you expect out of a remake? What are some good examples of where studios have done an excellent job? Or what are some examples of a remake that's left you feeling disappointed? As remaking games becomes more popular in years to come, the art of creating them will continue to change and adapt. Final Fantasy VII is undoubtedly a watershed moment in the process though, and it's introduced a completely new way to do it. Well, I hope you enjoyed this look at video game remakes and how Final Fantasy fits into this ever-changing avenue of gaming. If you did, be sure to share it. Every share counts, and it's the only way we can continue to grow here on YouTube. Thanks for watching, and as always, I'll see you guys on the next one.